Something is blocking the light inside 3I ATLS, and it shouldn't be there. The leaked image looks wrong from the first second. A geometric void where nature should produce clouds of turbulence. A steady shadow where everything should be chaotic. This isn't a grainy photo of distant blur. It's a structure that stays fixed in all frames, as if someone built something and wrapped it in ice. Now add the new statistical bombshell from Harvard's Avi Mandel. The probability that Atlas made its close pass by Jupiter purely by chance. 0.00005%. If you think that sounds like intentional maneuvering, you are nowhere near alone. Stay with me, because tonight we're stepping into the frame-by-frame analysis, the orbital math, the silence from institutions, and the one discovery that turned a strange interstellar visitor into a planetary threat. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why some researchers are quietly using a new word: intervention. If you're as obsessed with this mystery as I am, hit follow. You'll want to be here when this story keeps unfolding. The first time Dr. Emily Carter saw the shadow inside the coma, she didn't speak for almost an entire minute. And for Carter, silence was rare. She was the kind of astrophysicist who cursed at equations like they owed her money. The kind who drank too much iced coffee and forgot to eat when she found an anomaly. At 2:13 a.m. in the Goddard Space Flight Center data lab, she leaned closer to her monitor, one hand hovering in the air like she forgot what she meant to do with it. She whispered, "Run it again." Her intern, Lucas Hayes, frowned. It's the same calibration, same exposures. Nothing changed. But something had changed. In the last 12 hours, Atlas, our third confirmed interstellar visitor, had brightened and dimmed twice. 2 pulses. And now the third, right on its impossible 16.16-hour cycle. The light dipped. The shadow stayed. A shape inside the cloud. Lucas swallowed. It looks straight. Straight. The word felt obscene. Nothing in a comet is straight. Not jets, not cavities, not density gradients. Nature curves. Nature swirls. Nature doesn't draw lines. Yet there it was. A silhouette with edges, thin, sharp, flat, like an object wrapped beneath layers of outgassing ice. Emily finally exhaled. We're looking at structure. Natural? Lucas asked. If it is, it's a kind we've never seen. The pulse ended. The brightness dipped another few percent. But the shadow didn't dissolve. It rotated. Or reoriented. And that made Emily sit back, blood draining from her face. Shadows don't reorient independently of the coma. Objects do. The next morning the image leaked. Not from NASA, not from Goddard. Someone inside the data distribution pipeline posted a blurred version on a private Discord server where astronomers and students shared raw telescope scraps like contraband. Within hours, it was everywhere. Reddit, Twitter, Telegram, even cable news. Every outlet paired it with the same sentence. What is inside 3I ATLS? NASA, for once, didn't deny the photo. That silence was louder than any press release. But the real shock didn't come from the photo. It came from orbital mechanics. 3 days later, Emily and Lucas stood in a cramped conference room in Pasadena, inside the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The blinds were shut, phones in lockers, the air thick with that antiseptic smell you only get in government buildings. Dr. Nathan Reeves, the head of Near-Earth Object Trajectory Analysis, paced at the front. Jaw tight, teeth working a piece of gum like it personally offended him. You've all seen the Jupiter Pass anomaly, but there's a second effect. He tapped the remote. The screen lit up with a simulation. Atlas passing Jupiter in late October, swinging around faster than predicted. Too fast. Too clean. Too precise. Based on gravity alone, this bend shouldn't be this sharp. Someone in the room muttered, "We know." Reeves ignored it. Here's the part you don't know. New lines appeared on the screen. Two faint blue tracks. Two objects. Both small. Both previously cataloged asteroids from the mid-90s. They were drifting harmlessly through the outer system until Atlas passed near them. The deflection was tiny, barely measurable at first. But over weeks, the drift amplified. Tiny pushes matter when you're talking millions of miles. Reeves zoomed in. Two new orbits drew themselves in red, then continued drawing, and drawing, until they intersected a blue sphere labeled simply Earth. The room fell silent. No one moved. Emily felt the cold spread up her arms. "Is that real?" she whispered. Reeves nodded. His voice dropped. As of this morning, both bodies, asteroid 1998 QX1 and 2001 LS7, have been nudged onto Earth-crossing trajectories. Lucas blinked. Nudged. By Atlas. "That's the part we can't explain," Reeves said. "But the timing is problematic." A new slide appeared. Impact probabilities. Dates. Velocities. 1998 QX1. Impact window. July 2031. Confidence 11%. 2001 LS7. Impact window. February 2033. Confidence 6%. The percentages were low, but low didn't mean safe. Low meant possible. And the planet only had one planet-sized margin for error. Someone finally spoke. "You think Atlas did this intentionally?" Reeves didn't answer. His jaw tensed. And that was the answer. Publicly, NASA said nothing. Privately, the U.S. government requested a classified briefing. Emily wasn't supposed to be there. Neither was Lucas. But Reeves had insisted. They were the ones who first spotted the shadow. The ones who saw the pulse cycle. The ones who could explain it. The meeting was held at a secure facility in Virginia. A windowless room. A polished table. 4 senators, 3 generals, 1 secretary of science. An aide dimmed the lights. "Dr. Carter, you may begin." Emily stepped forward, heart punching her ribs. She wasn't a politician. She wasn't a strategist. She was a scientist who got nauseous on airplanes. But she'd rehearsed all night. She clicked the first slide. Atlas, surrounded by its shimmering coma. The internal shadow like a dark scar. "This object pulses every 16 hours, she began. "We've ruled out rotation. We've ruled out sublimation noise. The brightness swings are too large. The period is too precise." She zoomed in on the leaked frame. "This shadow remains stable while the coma moves around it. That implies internal structure, solid structure, unlike any natural comet or interstellar object we've documented." A senator cleared his throat. "Are you saying it's artificial?" Emily hesitated. "I'm saying it behaves like something with engineered features." A murmur rippled through the room. General Harris leaned forward. "Get to the asteroids." She clicked again. 2 red lines. Earth. The intersections. As of last week, both asteroids were diverted by Atlas's gravitational or non-gravitational influence. "Non-gravitational?" the secretary echoed. "That's the troubling part," Lucas whispered, before Emily could stop him. "The deflection vectors don't follow normal momentum exchange. They're asymmetrical, almost like—" Emily shot him a warning glance. But it was too late. The room was awake now. "Almost like what?" the general pressed. Lucas swallowed. "Like something nudged them." Silence. Thick. Heavy. Emily stepped in. "We're not saying Atlas pushed them deliberately. We're saying that its outgassing jets or some other mechanism coincided with the deflections. But the jets fire in multiple directions, 7 documented so far, and none of them align cleanly with solar heating. We've considered thermal models, sublimation patches, complex rotation. Nothing explains the pattern. General Harris exhaled through her nose. So what is it doing? We don't know, Emily said. But the timing matters. The deflection occurred at the peak of 2 brightness pulses. Senator Klein rubbed his temples. You're telling me this thing, this interstellar whatever, might have aimed asteroids at Earth? Emily shook her head. We're not making that conclusion. But the math doesn't rule it out, Reeves said from behind her. The room erupted. The media never learned about the briefing, but they could sense the tension. NASA press appearances became tight-lipped. ESA postponed their December public report, and for the first time since Atlas entered the solar system, there were military analysts on the nightly news giving opinions that astronomers should have been giving. Atlas wasn't a comet anymore. It was a question mark with velocity. And then came the moment that shifted public panic into full gear. A privately owned observatory in Arizona released unauthorized images showing one of Atlas's jets firing perpendicular to the solar vector, straight sideways, during a brightness peak. Solar heating couldn't explain it. Natural outgassing couldn't explain it. It looked deliberate, like a side thrust, a maneuver. Within an hour, the hashtag went viral. Hashtag Atlas is steering. Emily's inbox exploded. Lucas's phone didn't stop buzzing. Goddard scientists were told to keep quiet. But the worst wasn't online. It arrived in Emily's lab 3 days later, inside a sealed envelope slid under her office door. No name, no signature, just a thin USB drive. She stared at it, stomach tight. Her instincts screamed trap, but her curiosity whispered louder. She locked the door, booted up an offline laptop, and inserted the drive. A single file, no metadata, no header, just a timestamp. And 6 images. Her breath caught in her throat. It was exactly the dataset the world had been begging to see. A full 16-hour Atlas time-lapse, 6 frames, evenly spaced, perfectly calibrated, high resolution. The data everyone claimed didn't exist, or wasn't ready, or hadn't been captured. But it existed, and now it was on her screen. She opened the first frame. Atlas, calm, stable, shadow intact. Second, slight brightening, jets forming. Third, peak brightness, a brilliant halo expanding from the nucleus. And the jets. Emily froze. Her fingers went numb. The jets weren't random. They weren't chaotic. They weren't heat-driven. They were aligned. Not with the sun, not with rotation. Aligned with the 2 asteroids, laser straight, directional, coherent. Frame 4, brightness dropping, jets fading, the alignment loosening, but not breaking. Frame 5, calm returning. Frame 6, the shadow inside the coma, reoriented. Not randomly, as if checking. Emily leaned back from the screen, pulse hammering her ears. It felt like looking into the eye of something alive. No, not alive. Aware. She replayed the time-lapse. Again and again. By the 5th viewing, her throat had gone dry. The implications weren't subtle. Atlas wasn't just pulsing. It wasn't just structured. It wasn't just steering. It was targeting. Her hands shook. She called Lucas into the room. He stepped in, saw her face, and went pale. "Emily, what happened? Look." He sat beside her. She hit play. By frame 3, he covered his mouth. "Oh my God!" She nodded. "Yes." He stared at her, terrified. "What do we do?" Emily swallowed. She didn't want to say it, but the truth was a blade, and it was already cutting. "We tell Reeves." "And then?" Lucas whispered. Emily looked back at the screen, the cold geometry inside the comet, the pulse like a heartbeat, and the jets pointing exactly where they shouldn't. Then she said softly, "Then we ask the question no one wants to ask." Lucas's voice trembled. "Which is?" She met his eyes. "Whether Atlas is warning us or attacking us." Emily took the USB to Reeves's office. He locked the door before she even spoke. He knew. Her expression told him everything. They reviewed the frames together. Reeves didn't swear often. He swore now, quietly, repeatedly. "This can't be real." "But it is," Emily whispered. He stood up, walked to the window, pressed his forehead to the glass like he could push the impossible back out into space. Finally, he turned. "Emily, this changes everything." She nodded. "We need to alert the Planetary Defense Coordination Office." Reeves hesitated, and that hesitation, 2 seconds, no more, told her the truth. Someone already had. By midnight, Emily and Lucas were sitting in a black government SUV driving toward a secure DC facility. Reeves rode in the front beside a silent federal officer. No one spoke. No one breathed deeply. The air felt pressurized. When they arrived, they were escorted down 3 flights of concrete stairs into a room so plain it felt hostile. 2 people waited for them. A woman in a navy suit with eyes sharp as razors, and a man whose posture screamed military intelligence. The woman spoke first. "I'm Deputy Director Karen Locke. This is Colonel Mark Stanton. You're here because you have seen data that is not authorized for external circulation." Emily's heart sank. She recognized the tone, the prelude to threats. Locke continued. "What you discovered is being investigated under national security protocols. From this moment on, you are not to disclose any information about Atlas, its jets, or its gravitational anomalies to any outside party, including colleagues at NASA." Lucas clenched his fists. "Are you serious? Humanity is at risk." Stanton cut him off. "We are well aware of the situation." Emily steadied her voice. "What's being done about the asteroids?" Locke's expression didn't change. "That is classified at the moment." "That's not good enough," Emily said. Stanton's jaw tightened. "You don't get to decide what's good enough." Emily stepped forward. "There are 2 inbound asteroids with measurable impact probabilities. The public deserves stability. And until we understand whether Atlas is a threat or an opportunity, this stays contained." Emily stared at her. "Opportunity?" Locke folded her arms. "Until you prove malice, we will not assume it." Emily felt heat rising in her chest. It nudged 2 asteroids into Earth-crossing orbits. Or it nudged them into predictable trajectories so we could intercept them. That stunned her into silence. She hadn't considered that. She didn't want to. Lucas whispered, "Why would it help us?" Locke's answer was simple. "We don't know. That's why we need time." Reeves finally spoke, voice low. "What if we don't have time?" Locke closed her folder. "Then we'll take it." Emily felt something cold slide down her spine. Control. They wanted control of the narrative, control of the fear, control of the science. "We're not here to fight you," Locke said, "but understand this. If Atlas is artificial, if it has intent, if it is capable of maneuvering, then we are not dealing with astronomy. We are dealing with first contact." First contact. The words felt heavy enough to bend the floor. Stanton stepped forward. "And if these asteroids are a weapon, we will neutralize them." Emily swallowed. "How?" He didn't blink. "Any way necessary." That was the moment Emily realized something. This wasn't just a scientific discovery anymore. It wasn't even a threat assessment. It was a countdown. And Atlas, whatever it was, had just made the first move. When they left the facility, the night air felt wrong. Too thin. Too still. Washington slept around them, unaware the sky had changed. Lucas walked beside her, silent until they reached the curb. "Emily, what if Locke is right?" "About what?" "About Atlas trying to help us. What if those nudges weren't attacks? What if they were instructions?" She stared up at the stars, at the darkness between them, at the place Atlas had come from. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I do know this. Whether it's helping us or testing us, it chose to interfere." Lucas nodded slowly. "And now we have to respond." Emily exhaled, trembling. "Yeah, but the question is, how?" Behind them, Reeves was already on the phone with someone far above his pay grade and far above Emily's. The first chapter of humanity's newest crisis had begun. But Atlas pulsed again.
A heartbeat in the dark, as if reminding them, this story is nowhere near finished. Atlas pulsed again before dawn, and every major observatory on Earth caught it. The pulse was sharper this time, brighter, faster, like something inside the nucleus had changed its rhythm. Not an organic beat, not chaos, a recalibration, a shift in intent. In Pasadena, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory buzzed with a kind of quiet panic that no one acknowledged out loud. You could hear it in the footsteps, too quick, in the voices, too low, in the way people kept checking the sky even though they were surrounded by concrete and fluorescent light. Emily Carter sat alone in meeting room 12B, a mug of untouched coffee cooling beside her, eyes fixed on the new telemetry from Mauna Kea. Frame 1, calm. Frame 2, steepening arc. Frame 3, pulse. Frame 4, the coma expanding like breath into winter air. Frame 5, jets firing 3 times, not 7. Directed, focused, controlled. She zoomed in on Jet 3, a narrow plume, too narrow for thermal outflow. Someone knocked. Lucas leaned in, hair still damp from a rushed shower, hoodie inside out. "You saw it?" Emily nodded. "Yeah." He shut the door behind him and sat down. 3 jets only. Why would it reduce the count? Emily stared at the data, fingers tapping an uneven rhythm on the table. "It's optimizing." Lucas blinked. "Optimizing what?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Reeves entered the room moments later, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened like he'd slept in his office again. "We've confirmed the pulse with NASA Infrared Telescope Facility," he said, dropping into the chair across from Emily. "It wasn't random, and it wasn't just brightening." He clicked his remote. A graph appeared, showing a sudden spike in reflected light not from Atlas, but from something else. "Is that one of the asteroids?" Lucas asked. Reeves nodded. 1998 QX1, the closer one. Emily felt her pulse quicken. "What happened?" Reeves exhaled. "We think it just changed course. Again." Lucas straightened. "No, no way. Already?" Reeves changed the slide. The old orbit, a pale blue curve. The new one, bright red, bent just a fraction inward, toward Earth. A fingertip's width on the screen, millions of miles in reality. Emily's stomach twisted. "How big is the deviation?" "Small," Reeves said, "but significant." Lucas leaned forward. Was the deviation synchronized with the Atlas pulse? Reeves hesitated. Then he nodded. That was all it took. All three of them stared at the screen like it might burst into flames. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, and Emily realized something unsettling. Atlas wasn't just repeating behavior, it was escalating. They weren't allowed to tell the public. They weren't allowed to tell most of NASA. But you can't hide the cosmos from people who spend their lives staring into it. Within 20 minutes of the pulse, amateur astronomers in Spain, Brazil, and Australia had all posted suspiciously similar questions. Did 1998 QX1 just shift? Something's off with its brightness curve. Anyone else see a micro dip in trajectory? NASA social media accounts posted a generic statement about ongoing observation and normal cometary variability. It fooled no one, especially not Dr. Rachel Lynn. Rachel was a celestial dynamics professor at MIT who hated being told to keep quiet about science. She'd been following Atlas like a hawk, posting her own simulations online and live streaming breakdowns of each pulse. When she saw the sudden bend in QX1's track, she tweeted a single sentence that went instantly viral. Atlas just touched something again. That tweet reached nearly every newsroom in America within the hour. By lunchtime, networks called it the second deflection event. NASA called it a coincidental dynamic perturbation. But inside JPL, Lucas whispered what everyone else already suspected. It's steering again. At 3:22 p.m., Reeves sent Emily a single text. Room 5. Now. She grabbed her badge, stormed down 2 hallways, and found him waiting with 2 people she'd never seen before. One wore a visitor badge with a blue stripe, the kind that meant federal clearance beyond NASA. The other wore no badge at all. The unbadged Rand spoke first. Dr. Carter, thank you for joining us. I'm Alan Murray from the Office of Space Intelligence. Emily stiffened. She didn't know the office existed. She wasn't supposed to know. Murray gave a polite smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. We'd like your help understanding today's anomaly. Emily crossed her arms. Which anomaly? Murray's smile widened. All of them. He turned on the monitor. A zoomed-in image of Atlas, the pulsing coma, the internal shadow, and something new. A faint, ghost-like ripple emanating from the core during the brightest moment of the pulse. Not a jet, not light scattering. A wave. Emily leaned closer. What is that? Murray tapped the screen. We're calling it the primary envelope distortion. It appears in the raw data from 3 observatories. It's subtle but consistent. Emily frowned. It looks like a pressure wave. Lucas nodded. A shock front. Murray folded his hands. What kind of natural object emits a directional shock front synchronized with a brightness pulse? Emily didn't answer, because the answer was none. Reeves cleared his throat. There's more. He switched to a second slide. Orbital projections, thousands of simulation runs, colored lines writhing across the solar system. At the bottom of the screen, estimated time before QX1 enters Earth's gravitational keyhole, 11 months. If it entered that zone, if it slipped into the precise corridor of space where Earth's gravity would swing it back around, collision became almost inevitable. Can we intercept it? Emily asked quietly. Reeves nodded. Potentially. If we launched within the year, but Atlas keeps altering the margins. Lucas swallowed hard. So, we're racing something we don't understand. Murray watched them all with calm intensity. You asked earlier whether Atlas was hostile, but we're considering the alternative. The alternative? Emily frowned. That it's testing us. She stared at him. Testing. Not attacking, not warning. Testing. For what? Murray glanced at the projection. For readiness, he said. For capability. For how we respond to threats in our own system. Emily's mind spun. You think Atlas is evaluating humanity? Not humanity, Murray said softly. Our infrastructure, our coordination, our will. Reeves exhaled sharply. That's speculation. Murray didn't blink. So is every explanation we have. Except one. Atlas acts with intent. Lightning cracked outside the building, though the sky had been clear moments earlier. The sound reverberated through the walls like an omen. That night, Emily drove home through a storm so sudden it felt engineered. Rain hammered the windshield, wipers fighting in vain. She kept replaying Murray's words. Testing. Will. Her highlights caught something on the roadside, a figure waving frantically. She slowed, heart pounding. But it was only her exhausted mind stitching shapes into shadows. She reached her apartment around 10 p.m., soaked and shivering. The power flickered. Twice. She curled onto the couch with her laptop and opened the new data from the pulse, frame by frame. Contrast enhanced. Slow motion. Again and again, her eyes kept locking onto the same detail. The internal shadow shifting before the jets fired. Not after, before. As if preparing. As if planning. She zoomed in farther than the resolution should allow. The shadow had edges. Angles. A repeating geometric shape just subtle enough to hide inside noise. Her breath caught. She traced a fingertip along the outline. A tetrahedral pattern. No natural body forms perfect tetrahedral shadows. Her phone buzzed. A message from Reeves. Do not share any new findings. Wait for morning. We need to be strategic. Strategic. The word felt wrong. Cold. Military. Emily closed the phone. But she didn't close the file because the tetrahedral pattern wasn't the part that terrified her. It was what lay beside it. Faint, almost invisible. A secondary shape. Smaller. Smoother. Circular. Like an aperture. And apertures open. At 2:13 a.m., her door buzzer rang. She froze. No one visited her at 2 a.m. No one had the gate code. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Reeves. Do not open the door. I didn't send anyone. She backed away slowly. The buzzer stopped. Silence filled the apartment like smoke. After a full minute, her phone pinged again. Lucas. Emily, please answer. Something's happening. Call me now. She dialed instantly.
Lucas answered on the first ring, breathless. Look outside, he whispered. She pulled back her curtains, and for a moment, she forgot how to breathe. The sky above Los Angeles was glowing, a faint pearly light, impossible to place, too diffuse to be a spotlight, too steady to be lightning, hung above the horizon. Beautiful. Wrong. As she watched, the glow pulsed. Once. Twice. 3 times. Emily's skin prickled. She whispered, "Oh my God." Lucas spoke shakily through the line. Atlas just pulsed again, but this time it wasn't just optical. Several ground sensors recorded something. What kind of something? A low-frequency wave. We don't know if it's electromagnetic or gravitational or... His voice broke. It reached Earth, Emily. The pulse reached us. Her knees weakened. She steadied herself on the window frame. Was it harmful? No, Lucas said. At least, not detectable. But the amplitude, Emily, this wasn't random. It was aimed. Aimed where? There was a pause. A soft, dreadful pause. At us. By morning, the pulse was global news. Scientists on live broadcasts said it was harmless. Physicists said Earth's atmosphere filtered it. Skeptics called it hype. But the people who spent the night staring at their televisions knew better. Something had reached Earth. Something intentional. At JPL, the mood was electric and terrified. Everyone had slept maybe an hour. Reeves met Emily and Lucas at the entrance, holding 3 cups of black coffee and a face that looked 12 years older than yesterday. Inside, he said. Now. They hurried to the Situation Room. A massive screen displayed a mash of satellite readings, ground-based interferometry, and Atlas telemetry. Murray and Deputy Director Locke were already inside. Locke turned as the trio entered. "We've analyzed the wave," she said without preamble. "It wasn't electromagnetic, it wasn't acoustic, and it wasn't a shockwave." Emily's heart thudded. "Then what was it?" Murray stepped forward. "It was a modulation. A signal." The room fell silent. Lucas whispered, "A signal to who?" Murray looked directly at Emily. "To us." She sank into a chair. Her pulse roared in her ears. The air felt too thin. Locke tapped a keyboard. The screen zoomed in on the wave signature. A repeating sequence. 12 long pulses. 4 short. 12 long again. Emily's mouth went dry. "That looks patterned," she said softly. "Not just patterned," Murray replied. "Encoded." Lucas blinked. "Encoded with what?" Locke answered. "We don't know. Yet. But there's structure, mathematical structure, ratios that correspond to orbital resonance frequencies, and hidden inside those," she zoomed again. Numbers appeared. Frequencies. Angles. A tiny diagram. Emily froze. The diagram? It was the same geometry as the shadow. Locke nodded grimly. "Atlas sent us a representation of itself." Lucas whispered, "Why?" Murray inhaled slowly. "To show us something, or to warn us, or," he paused, "to ask us to respond." Emily felt the floor tilt beneath her. Because if Atlas was asking for a response, if it was initiating a dialogue, then the steering of the 2 asteroids was no longer an isolated anomaly. It was part of a sequence, a plan, a message written in orbital mechanics. "Director Locke," Reeves said quietly, "what do we do next?" Locke turned from the screen, her expression carved from stone. "We answer." But answering wasn't simple. At 10:45 a.m., the President's Science Council convened a meeting. Emily, Lucas, and Reeves were brought in as technical advisors. The debate broke out instantly. "We cannot signal back to something we do not understand. What if it interprets silence as hostility? We need more data before we decide on any response. What if this is the only window we get?" Emily listened as politicians argued over cosmic diplomacy like it was a budget meeting. Finally, she stood. "Excuse me," she said. The room quieted. "We're assuming Atlas thinks like us, that it interprets risk the way we do, but its behavior suggests a non-human logic. It communicates through gravitational nudges, through pulses, through geometry. If we're going to respond, it needs to be in a language it can parse." The Secretary of Science frowned. "And what language is that, Dr. Carter?" Emily swallowed. "Orbital behavior." The room stared. She continued. "We don't send a radio message. We don't shine a laser. We alter the path of a small object in a deliberate, mathematically predictable way. A change that Atlas can observe. Something symbolic. Something unmistakable." Locke leaned forward. "You're suggesting we use astrodynamics as communication." "Yes," Emily said, "because that's how Atlas is speaking to us." "And what object," the Secretary asked, "do you propose we move?" Emily hesitated. Then she said the thing she'd been afraid to think. "A small, harmless, a shift Atlas will recognize." "Like what?" Reeves asked. Emily looked at the boardroom map of the solar system. She pointed. "A near-Earth microasteroid. Something we can push just a few centimeters per second. A gesture, not a threat." Lucas inhaled sharply. "A reply?" Emily nodded. "A reply." Silence. Debate. Fear. Excitement. And then, the turning point. The Secretary leaned back. Prepare a list of candidate bodies. We'll consider authorization. Emily felt her chest tighten. This wasn't just science anymore. It was conversation with an intelligence wrapped in ice, an intelligence that nudged asteroids like chess pieces, and humanity was about to make its first move. That evening, Emily returned to her office, mind buzzing. She opened her laptop. The images from the pulsed shadow glowed on her screen. The tetrahedral geometry, the internal aperture, the jets aligning, the ripple wave expanding into interplanetary space. She replayed the time-lapse. Frame 1, shadow resting. Frame 2, a slight tilt. Frame 3, the aperture widening. Frame 4, the brightest pulse. Frame 5, the jets firing, perfectly aimed. Emily leaned closer, her fingers trembled. She noticed something she hadn't seen before. Something small, faint. During the peak brightness, when the jets formed their perfect triad, a second shadow appeared. Not inside Atlas, outside. A tiny haze, a micro-object, barely visible, too small to classify, but clearly real. It drifted away from Atlas, accelerating, departing, like a seed released from a pod. Her breath caught. Atlas wasn't just steering asteroids, it was launching something. Her phone vibrated violently. A call from Reeves. She answered. "Emily," he said, voice trembling, "we just detected a new object leaving Atlas. Nobody knows what it is." She closed her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I'm looking at it." "What does it mean?" Reeves asked. She stared at the drifting speck, and for the first time since Atlas entered the solar system, she felt truly afraid. "Reeves, I think it's sending something to us." The object leaving Atlas was too small to register on most telescopes, too faint to reflect sunlight, too cold to radiate heat. But it wasn't invisible. NASA caught it first, barely, a pixel-sized anomaly drifting away from Atlas at a steady, unnatural velocity. Not ballistic, not random, controlled. Guided as if by something stronger than gravity and smarter than chaos. They labeled it AO1, Atlas Object 1. By the time Emily Carter reached JPL the next morning, AO1 had already accelerated by another 5 meters per second. Too consistent for debris, too smooth for ice, too directional for coincidence. The first words out of her mouth were barely a whisper. "It's coming here." Reeves nodded solemnly. "Toward the inner solar system, on a clean vector." Lucas stared at the velocity plot, face pale. "Is it aimed at Earth?" Reeves exhaled. "We don't know yet, but it's on a trajectory that intersects our orbital plane." The words fell into the room like iron. Not a collision course, not yet, but a meeting course. Something Atlas launched, something smaller than a spacecraft, larger than dust, was traveling along a path that would bring it into Earth's neighborhood. And everyone in that room understood what that meant. This wasn't a threat, not immediately. It was a message. The Situation Room at JPL filled with people faster than the last time. Military analysts, NASA directors, contractors with badges Emily didn't recognize. 2 people in suits who refused to give their names. It was standing room only. Deputy Director Locke entered last, followed by Colonel Stanton and Alan Murray from the Office of Space Intelligence. Locke didn't waste time. As of 0620 UTC, AO1 is on a stable inward trajectory. At its current speed, it'll pass inside Jupiter's orbit in 6 weeks. Someone near the back muttered, "6 weeks!" Locke continued, ignoring the panic stirring at the edges. "We've analyzed its acceleration profile. It matches neither gas drag nor solar pressure, and it shows no sign of outgassing." "Then what's powering it?" a director asked. Murray clasped his hands. We don't know, but whatever launched it from Atlas did so with precision. Emily watched the screen as AO1's projected path extended like a thread of red silk across the solar system, a narrow, elegant arc. Too elegant, almost intentional. Colonel Stanton spoke. The object is small, possibly under a meter across, too tiny to pose direct impact damage, but we cannot assume benign intent. Emily finally tore her eyes from the screen. Have you considered the possibility, she said carefully, that AO1 may not be a weapon, but a probe? The room stirred. Several people shifted. One of the unnamed men frowned. Stanton's voice sharpened. Probes can be reconnaissance precursors. Emily didn't flinch. And they can be communication devices. Locke tilted her head. To communicate what? Emily looked back at the diagram, the pulse, the geometry, the launched object. Maybe, she said slowly, Atlas sent AO1 because it wants us to track it, because it wants us to see that it can send small bodies on controlled paths, because it's demonstrating something. Lucas murmured, a capability demonstration. Reeves added quietly, or an invitation. Silence fell. Murray finally broke it. Our job, he said, is to determine which. For the next 48 hours, a storm of analysis swept through JPL and NASA Ames. Every spare GPU was commandeered, every orbital model recalibrated, every noise reduction algorithm pushed to its limit. AO1's true size remained unknown, its internal structure unknown, its propulsion method unknown, but the trajectory, that became clear. On day 2, Emily burst into Reeves' office without knocking. I figured it out, she said breathlessly. The path isn't aimed at Earth. Not directly. Reeves looked up. At what then? Emily zoomed in on the inner solar system. Here. He squinted. That's nothing. No, that's Lagrange's point L1. Reeves' eyes widened. The L1 point, the space where Earth and Sun's gravitational pulls balance perfectly, was one of the most stable vantage points in the solar system. Satellites go there, observation platforms, solar monitors, and now, something from Atlas. Lucas entered the office at that exact moment, breathless. You saw it too? Emily nodded. It's heading for L1, which means Atlas doesn't want to hit us. It wants us to watch us.
Reeves rubbed his face. Or monitor, or study, or evaluate humanity's response capability, or communicate, Emily repeated. But her voice was softer now, uncertain. Reeves stood. We need to escalate this. That afternoon, they were flown to Washington. This time, the briefing wasn't in a basement. It was in a Pentagon conference suite so deep in the building that Emily felt like the walls were listening. The moment they entered, the atmosphere shifted. Fewer scientists, more uniforms, more black suits. A holographic projection of the solar system hung in the center of the room. AO1 glowed like a red ember slowly drifting inward. A 4-star admiral strode to the front. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a foreign object approaching a critical gravitational zone. We need to understand its intent. We need to intercept it. Emily stiffened. Intercept. That word could mean capture. It could also mean destroy. Lucas whispered, what if it interprets that as aggression? Stanton overheard. If it does, we need to know now, not later. The Admiral continued, we're considering 3 mission profiles. A screen changed. A high-speed flyby probe. Fast, simple, minimal interaction. A capture net drone. Risky, but allows retrieval. A kinetic interceptor. Destroys AO1 before it reaches L1. Emily stepped forward. You cannot choose option 3. The room turned toward her. She swallowed, but didn't back down. AO1 is not on a collision course with Earth.
It's not accelerating aggressively. It's not performing evasive maneuvers. It's following a clean, predictable trajectory. Destroying it could be interpreted as hostility. Stanton crossed his arms. And doing nothing could be suicide. Emily felt heat rising in her chest. We're not dealing with a missile. We're dealing with something that may be capable of understanding us. We have one chance to respond without violence. Locke watched her with unreadable eyes. What would you propose, Dr. Carter? Emily breathed deeply. A rendezvous. Not destruction, not capture. Observation. A manned mission? The Admiral scoffed. That's insane. No, she said, an autonomous probe. Soft approach engines, no threat posture. Murray leaned forward. And if Atlas responds? Emily met his eyes. We learn something. Anything, but we don't escalate. The room went quiet. Finally, the Secretary of Defense spoke. Prepare the non-lethal probe. Mission designation Sentinel-1. Emily exhaled in relief. Then he added, but we prepare the kinetic interceptor too, as insurance. Her relief shattered. Sentinel-1 was built in a fever dream. Teams from Goddard, SpaceX, JPL, and the Air Force Lab worked around the clock. Engineers slept on cots. Programmers mainlined caffeine. New hardware arrived every hour. Emily oversaw the scientific payload, spectrometers, magnetic sensors, a laser rangefinder, and ultra-high frame camera array. Lucas handled trajectory calculations, rewriting whole chunks of guidance software to track something the size of a microwave oven at tens of thousands of miles per hour. Reeves supervised mission integration, arguing with military liaisons over every ounce of mass and every centimeter of shielding. But even with the rush, betrayal seeped through the cracks, because Emily discovered something at 3:07 a.m. on the 9th night, something she hadn't been told. Sentinel-1 had a secondary module, a tiny, shielded compartment containing a device she hadn't authorized, a kinetic microcharge, not large enough to destroy AO-1 outright, but enough to disable it, or damage it, or antagonize whatever launched it. She stormed into the operations tent. Reeves was with 2 colonels and a Pentagon contractor. Emily didn't care. What is that device? She demanded. Reeves sighed heavily. Emily? No, she snapped. Don't placate me. I saw the module. Why is there a charge on board Sentinel-1? One colonel spoke bluntly. Insurance. Emily slammed her hand on the table. You don't get to sneak weapons onto a probe meant for peaceful contact. It's non-lethal, the contractor said. It could still be catastrophic, she countered. Reeves rubbed his temples. Emily, please, this wasn't hidden from you. It was classified above your level. That's not an excuse, she said through clenched teeth. This could start a war with something we don't understand. Silence. Finally, Reeves said softly, Emily, the White House made the call. She stared at him, at the fatigue in his eyes, at the guilt. And you agreed? She whispered. He didn't answer, and that was the answer. She left the tent shaking. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind raced through orbital dynamics and moral boundaries and the cold geometry inside Atlas. She knew one thing. If Sentinel-1 fired that charge, humanity might never survive the consequences. Launch day arrived on a windswept morning at Vandenberg Space Force Base. A Falcon Heavy variant stood on the pad, steam rolling off its cryogenic fuel tanks like breath in winter air. Searchlights illuminated its white hull. The insignia of Sentinel-1 gleamed on its fairing. Simple, minimalistic. Emily stood with Lucas at the viewing area, wrapped in a NASA windbreaker that didn't do enough to shield her from the cold or the dread. Lucas exhaled shakily. Feels like we're sending a message in a bottle. Emily nodded. Just hope the ocean doesn't throw it back at us. The countdown began. T-minus 30 seconds. Reeves approached, hands in pockets, shoulders slumped. He looked at Emily with something like apology in his eyes. She didn't speak. didn't forgive. The engines ignited, a roar that rolled through the air like living thunder, and Sentinel-1 climbed skyward, a blazing arc through the pale morning air. For a moment, Emily let herself hope. A peaceful rendezvous, a controlled approach, a chance to learn something extraordinary. But hope has a short half-life in stories like this. 3 days later, while Sentinel-1 raced toward AO-1, something unexpected happened. AO-1 changed speed. Not direction, not wildly, but speed. It accelerated 2 meters per second, then 3, then 5. Lucas called Emily at 2:43 a.m. "You need to see this," his voice cracking. She drove to JPL half-dressed, hair wet, pulse racing. When she arrived, the control room was buzzing again, but this time the energy was sharp, panicked. AO-1 was accelerating, but not toward Earth, toward Sentinel-1. Emily grabbed Lucas's shoulder. "Is it intercepting us?" Lucas swallowed. "That's what it looks like." Reeves joined them, face grim. "The Pentagon is already debating whether to detonate the insurance charge preemptively." Emily felt nausea rise. "They can't. It's too soon. We don't know what AO-1 wants." Reeves lowered his voice. "And that's why they're scared." The screen zoomed in on the solar system model. 2 objects, Sentinel-1, AO-1, converging. Emily whispered, "It knows we're coming." Lucas whispered, "It wants to meet us halfway." And Reeves said the line that sent a chill through Emily's spine. "It's not testing us anymore. It's responding." The next 24 hours blurred into tension and caffeine and cold decision-making. The military wanted to initiate active defense protocol. Emily fought. She argued. She begged. She presented calculations showing AO-1 wasn't accelerating aggressively. She insisted this wasn't a threat vector. Finally, after hours of debate, the Secretary of Defense granted a temporary delay. Sentinel-1 would not activate its microcharge unless AO-1 performed a hostile maneuver. Emily didn't trust them, but it was all she had. The rendezvous happened in the black silence a million miles from Earth. Telemetry streamed in real time. AO-1 approached Sentinel-1 slowly, elegantly, a motion that felt almost shy. Emily, Lucas, Reeves, Locke, Stanton, Murray, and a dozen other officials crowded around the screens in the JPL control room. AO-1 rotated. Its form became clearer. A smooth object. Metallic? Mineral? Impossible to categorize. Small, no larger than a basketball, yet impossibly precise. It hovered 10 meters from Sentinel-1. Everyone held their breath. For the first time in human history, something built by an alien hand, or an alien process, was face-to-face with a machine built by us. Then AO-1 emitted a pulse.
A soft flash of light, barely detectable, measured, quiet, deliberate. Not an attack, a knocking, a request. Sentinel-1's sensors lit up. Emily leaned toward the screen, heart pounding. "What is it doing?" Lucas whispered. The readings came in, and when the data hit the monitors, when the signal decoded, the entire control room went silent. Because AO-1 wasn't sending a threat, wasn't sending coordinates, wasn't sending demands. It was sending Earth's orbital parameters, precise, accurate, updated to the second. Lucas's voice cracked. "It knows exactly where we are." Reeves swallowed. "And it wants to show us that." Emily stared at the screen, horror blooming in her chest. Because AO-1 didn't send the parameters casually. It sent them with corrections. Corrections that aligned perfectly with... Her throat constricted. "Stanton, what's the latest projection for the 2031 asteroid, QX1? Stanton stiffened. "Why?" Emily pointed to the data. "The corrections AO-1 sent are the exact adjustments needed for QX1 to hit the Earth dead center.
Lucas whispered. Dear God. Reeves went pale. It's giving us the exact impact solution. Emily's voice trembled. Atlas knew we'd intercept AO1. It wanted us to see this. It wanted us to know its aim wasn't accidental. Stanton's face hardened. That's enough. He turned to the comms officer. Prepare the microcharge. Emily grabbed his arm. No, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, he snapped. This is a targeting sequence. Murray stepped forward. Stanton, wait. Arm it. Stanton barked the words like an execution order. Alarms sounded. Sentinel-1 shifted posture. AO-1 responded instantly. It darted backwards, a flash, a blur, gone. Emily screamed, No! Stop! Stop the activation! But it was too late. Sentinel-1 fired the microcharge. A small, hard shock rippled across space. Silent, invisible. And somewhere out there, between planets, the first human act of violence against something from Atlas had taken place. Emily stared at the screen in horror. Because AO1 didn't retaliate. It didn't attack. It didn't pulse. It simply changed direction and accelerated. Fast, toward Atlas. Lucas whispered the words no one wanted to hear. It's going back to report what we did. Emily closed her eyes and realized the test wasn't whether humanity could respond. The test was whether humanity could restrain itself. And we failed. The moment AO1 accelerated back toward Atlas, something in the control room at JPL broke. Not equipment, not software, something human, something invisible and delicate. Maybe trust, or the thin illusion that we knew what we were doing. Emily Carter stood frozen, her hands shaking so hard she had to press them against the console to steady herself. Sentinel-1 had fired the microcharge. AO1 had fled like a wounded animal. And now the unknown was moving again, back to the thing that had launched it. The screens bathed everyone in a cold blue glow. Trajectory confirmed, a flight officer whispered. AO1 is accelerating toward Atlas at 42 meters per second squared. 42. Ridiculous. Impossible. No natural object accelerates that way. Emily felt sick. Reeves rubbed his face, stunned. Oh God, it's reporting us. Colonel Stanton folded his arms, jaw locked. We did what was necessary. Emily turned on him, voice trembling with fury. You detonated a weapon at an object that wasn't attacking us. It transmitted targeting coordinates, Stanton snapped. Coordinates that match a direct Earth impact for QX1. That qualifies as hostile intent. Emily's fists clenched. It was giving us information, Colonel. It didn't send a countdown. It didn't send a threat. It sent data. Neutral. Clean. That's how Atlas communicates. Or how it prepares strikes, Stanton countered. Murray stepped between them. Enough, both of you. Fighting doesn't help us now. Emily turned back to the data feed, just in time to see AO1 vanish behind Atlas's glare, swallowed by the shimmering coma as though it had never existed. Silence fell. Lucas whispered, Do we know if AO1 was damaged? Reeves shook his head. No telemetry. It either shut down or went dark. Emily wasn't sure which possibility terrified her more. Locke entered the room, flanked by 2 Pentagon communication officers and a civilian advisor who looked like he had aged 10 years in one night. She surveyed the room. Her expression wasn't anger, it was dread. Everyone, she said, listen carefully. The murmurs died instantly. Half an hour ago, the President approved a Level 3 planetary threat posture. Emily felt her heart dip into her stomach. Level 3 meant one thing: Earth was preparing for confrontation. Locke continued. All inbound objects will now be monitored under military authority. Sentinel-1 has been reclassified. Atlas is now designated a potential hostile foreign construct, and all scientific data flows will be routed through space intelligence. Emily felt like she'd been punched. "You can't do that," she said. "We're the ones who understand Atlas best." "Understanding it didn't stop you from missing the fact it launched a reconnaissance device," Stanton snapped back. "It wasn't reconnaissance." "Enough," Locke said sharply. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. "What's done is done. Our focus now is the response window." Emily stared at her. "Response window?" Locke tapped a key. The solar system model zoomed out. Atlas flashed at the edge of the screen. 2 red lines curled near Earth's orbit. "As of this morning," Locke said, "we have entered what analysts call the retaliation window. It's the period during which Atlas might react to the microcharge detonation." Emily's breath caught. "You think it will retaliate?" Locke didn't blink. "I think we have to assume it could." The room felt too small, too bright, too fragile. Emily felt the weight of everything crashing onto her. The pulse, the shadow, the geometry, the deflected asteroids, the launched probe, the microcharge, and now this, the retaliation window. The first sign arrived before dawn. At 4:16 a.m. Eastern Time, Atlas pulsed not with its usual 16-hour rhythm, but with something new. A double pulse, bright, then brighter, like a flinch, like a recoil, or a warning. Every observatory from Chile to Hawaii recorded the same thing. The coma collapsed inward for a heartbeat, forming a narrow cone, a funnel of light, a directional flash, straight toward the Sun-Earth line, straight toward us. Emily watched the event replayed in spectral bands. Not random, not chaotic. Controlled. Aiming. "What the hell is that?" Lucas whispered. Reeves answered in a hollow voice. "It's scanning us." Emily stiffened. "No, not scanning. Mapping." Locke entered, tablet in hand. "We have corroboration from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. The pulse was indeed aimed at Earth." "So it knows. It knows we fired on AO1. Colonel Stanton stepped forward. "Then we need to accelerate the planetary defense protocols. We have 2 inbound asteroids that may be part of its strategy. We have an object with unknown capabilities operating within pulse range. We cannot assume benign intent." Emily rounded on him. "You keep assuming Atlas thinks like a human war strategist. What if it doesn't? What if AO1's information wasn't an attack vector, but a comprehension vector? What if Atlas is trying to teach us how to interpret threat paths in its own language? Or warn us about QX1, not aim it?" Stanton scoffed. "No one warns you by throwing rocks at your planet." Emily took a step towards him, fury snapping. "No one warns by throwing rocks unless they're demonstrating something. Showing consequences, showing how trajectories work, showing you how your response affects future outcomes." Locke raised her voice. "Both of you stop." They fell silent. Locke exhaled. "At this moment, intent is unknowable. What is knowable is the timeline. QX1 reaches its keyhole in 10 months.
LS7 in 2 years. Atlas is pulsing faster. Interference is increasing. She locked eyes with Emily. "We need to prepare for options A and B." Emily swallowed. "What's B?" Locke didn't look away. "Active neutralization." Emily felt her heart drop. "Neutralization of what?" she whispered. "The asteroids," Locke answered. And, if necessary, Atlas. A chill swept through the room. Emily stared at her. You'd destroy something we haven't even tried communicating with? Locke's voice was cold steel. Dr. Carter, Sentinel-1 was our attempt at communication. Emily felt her tears burn her eyes, not of sadness, but of frustration. That wasn't communication. That was sabotage. You didn't tell us about the charge. You didn't give us a chance to tailor our approach. You lied to us. Locke didn't flinch. It wasn't a lie. It was protocol. Emily's voice cracked. You cost us the chance for peaceful first contact. Locke stepped closer, eyes sharp as razors. And you cost us the certainty that Atlas isn't hostile. Emily stared at her, trembling, because Locke was right and wrong, both at once. She finally said, You're preparing for war. Locke's answer was quiet. We're preparing for survival. At noon, the White House issued a public statement, carefully worded, painfully vague. A foreign interstellar object has released a secondary body entering Earth's region. There is no immediate danger. NASA and the Department of Defense are monitoring the situation. No mention of the microcharge. No mention of the deflected asteroids. No mention of Atlas pulsing directly at Earth. Public panic simmered, but it hadn't yet boiled. Inside NASA, however, everything was boiling, and Emily was drowning in it. Her phone buzzed with calls she couldn't take, emails she couldn't answer, messages from colleagues begging for information she wasn't allowed to share. News clicks showing commentators waving blurry Atlas photos and screaming words like alien engine and cosmic threat. She walked through the hallway of JPL like a ghost. Lucas caught up to her near the elevators. Emily, wait. She stopped, barely. You okay? He asked softly. No, I'm not okay. I don't know if we provoked something we can't control. I don't know if we misinterpreted everything. I don't know if AO1 was peaceful or hostile. Or both. Lucas stepped closer. You do know something. You know that Atlas communicates through patterns, through trajectories, through pulsing geometry. You saw it before anyone. Emily met his eyes. What good is knowing if no one listens? He didn't answer, because there was no good answer. The real shift, the one that changed everything, happened at 7:42 p.m. Emily was at her desk, staring blankly at an orbital simulation, when her monitor flashed red. A new alert. Atlas Anomalous Pulse Event. Extreme Class. She bolted upright. The spectral graphs poured in. Brightness spike, off the charts. Pulse duration, longer than any previous event. Energy distribution, directional again. But this time, it wasn't aimed at Earth. It was aimed at something else entirely. Emily zoomed in. A narrow cone of radiation, almost like a beam, projected from Atlas's coma. It wasn't symmetrical. It wasn't diffuse. It was targeted. At 1998 QX1. Lucas burst into her office breathless. You saw it? Emily pointed at the trajectory overlay. The pulse hit QX1, directly, like a push. Reeves appeared in the doorway, pale. It's accelerating the asteroid again. Emily felt her pulse spike. Toward Earth? No, Reeves whispered. Toward itself. Emily blinked. What?
Reeves tapped the screen with a shaking finger. Atlas pulled QX-1 toward itself, like a tractor effect. Lucas whispered, horrified. It's rearranging the pieces. Emily grabbed the edge of her desk for balance. What does that mean? Reeves swallowed hard. It means QX-1 isn't a weapon aimed at us. He paused. It's a resource aimed at Atlas. Emily's breath caught. He continued. It needs the asteroid for mass, for elements, for geometry, for construction. Emily whispered. Reeves nodded slowly. Atlas is building something. The room erupted with alarms, but Emily barely heard them. Her thoughts ran like lightning. Atlas had launched AO-1. AO-1 had returned with knowledge of Earth's defenses. Atlas pulsed, mapping our world. And now QX-1 was moving directly toward it, momentum redirected by a pulse that defied physics. Emily leaned over her keyboard, fingers trembling. No, this doesn't make sense, she murmured. If Atlas wanted that asteroid, why nudge it toward Earth first? Why create the threat at all? Reeves met her gaze. Maybe the threat wasn't the point. Then what was? Reeves inhaled deeply. To see how we'd react. Emily felt the truth slice into her like ice. The asteroid wasn't a weapon. It was a stress test of human decision-making, of military impulse, of restraint, of our nature. Stanton appeared behind them. His voice was grim. The President wants immediate targeting solutions for intercepting QX-1 before it reaches Atlas. They won't let it merge. Emily spun around. You can't intercept it. You'll be firing at something Atlas is actively manipulating. That's the idea, Stanton replied coldly. No, you don't understand. If we destroy QX-1 while Atlas is pulling it, it will see it as an attack, Lucas whispered. Stanton said nothing, because he knew, everyone knew, this was becoming a war we didn't understand, a war we didn't choose, and a war we might not survive. Locke entered, urgency radiating off of her like static. All departments listen carefully. We are officially classifying Atlas as active high-risk extraterrestrial construct. Our directive is to prevent any assembly or activation of unknown technology. She looked directly at Emily. We need to stop QX-1 from reaching Atlas. Emily stood slowly. You're making a mistake. Locke's expression hardened. Dr. Carter, humanity cannot afford inaction. Emily stepped closer. And it cannot afford misinterpretation. If Atlas is building something that threatens Earth, and if it's building something that protects Earth, Emily shot back. Locke blinked, just once. But it was enough. Emily continued, voice shaking but strong.
You're assuming everything it does is a prelude to violence, but everything it's done so far follows a consistent pattern: demonstration, response, counter-response, communication through motion, through gravity, through intent. Lucas added, if you intervene now, you'll rewrite the message in the worst possible way. Stanton stepped forward. Enough. We have orders. Emily shook her head. No, you have fear, and fear is not strategy. Locke stared at her with a look that was almost pity. Dr. Carter, she said softly, the time for interpretation is over. Then she turned to Stanton. Prepare the intercept proposal. Emily felt something break inside her. A quiet, desperate realization. If she didn't act, humanity would take the next step toward a war it couldn't win. And Atlas would answer. Not with data, not with pulses, not with a probe, with consequences. At midnight, while the senior officials slept or plotted or prayed, Emily sat alone in her office, staring at the latest telemetry. QX1 was accelerating. Atlas was pulsing faster, and the gravitational corridor between them glowed on her screen like a fuse. Lucas entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He placed one beside her. "You're still here?" he murmured. "So are you." They sat together in silence, watching the asteroid approach the alien object that had crossed interstellar space for reasons still unknown. Lucas finally whispered, "Emily, what do you think Atlas is building?" She didn't look away from the screen. "Something important. Something it needs QX1 for. Something that requires mass or elements or geometry." She paused. "Something that might change everything." He swallowed. "And what if we stop it?" Emily finally turned to him. "Then," she said softly, "we teach it exactly what we are." "And what is that?" Emily held his gaze. "A species that destroys before it understands." The words hung in the air like smoke. Lucas whispered, "So what do we do?" Emily exhaled shakily. "We stop them from firing. We stop the intercept. We stop the retaliation. Whatever it takes." "But how?" Lucas whispered. Emily stared at the arc of QX1 on her screen, curving toward Atlas like destiny. And she said with the quiet calm of someone standing at the edge of a cliff, "We talk to it." Lucas blinked. "To Atlas?" "No," she said. "To AO1. His eyes widened. "But AO1 is gone." "No," Emily murmured, zooming in on a faint spectral trace in the latest Atlas pulse. "Not gone. Not dead. Just hidden. Waiting." Emily felt her pulse slow, her breath steady. Atlas wasn't done communicating, and neither was she. In the dim glow of the monitor, she whispered, "If Atlas wants a conversation, we're not finished." Emily Carter hadn't slept in almost 40 hours, yet her mind burned with clarity, the terrifying kind that comes when the stakes have climbed so high that fear becomes background noise. Only purpose remains. The world outside didn't know how close it was to catastrophe, how thin the thread had become, how close Stanton and the Pentagon were to initiating a kinetic strike against QX1, an asteroid now accelerating not toward Earth, but toward Atlas, merging with the interstellar object like a piece of a machine returning to its source. The White House insisted the intercept proposal was purely precautionary. Emily knew better. One missile, one kinetic vehicle, one military reflex masquerading a strategy, and Atlas might retaliate in a way humanity was not built to survive. She sat in her dark office at JPL, the glow of her monitor reflecting in her tired eyes. Lucas slept on the couch behind her, exhausted after helping her decode every scrap of telemetry from Atlas's latest pulse. Because deep inside the noise, inside one sliver of reflected light, Emily had found it. AO1. Alive. Functional. Hidden inside the coma like a seed waiting for the wind. 10 faint flashes, perfectly spaced. Then 10 more. Then a pause. A repeating pattern. Not random. Not a distress beacon. An invitation. She copied the sequence onto her notepad. 10, 10, pause. 10, 10, pause. 10. A question. A waiting question. Something like, "Do you understand?" And Emily did. Not the full language, not the full intention, but enough to reply. She turned to Lucas, shaking his shoulder gently. He blinked awake. "Emily, what time is it?" "Time to send a message," she said softly. His eyes widened. "Back to Atlas?" "No," she said. "To AO1. They worked for hours, writing code, engineering pulses, using the only platform they had access to at this hour, the dormant antenna array on the ridge outside Pasadena, normally used for backup spacecraft telemetry. Not powerful, not elegant, but precise. And precision was the only language Atlas seemed to respect. Lucas calibrated the transmitter while Emily constructed the message in the only grammar Atlas had revealed: timing. Not radio content, not human symbols. Only the ratios. 10 pulses, pause, 10. Then their addition. 6, 6, pause. 6, 6, pause. A mirror. A reflection, the simplest response a civilization could give. Emily stared at the transmitter protocol. "You ready?" Lucas asked quietly. She nodded. "Send it." The transmitter hummed, a series of pulses, subtle, invisible, almost laughably weak compared to Atlas's power, left Earth and climbed into the blackness. The message was gone in seconds. Into the void, into silence, into unknown judgment. Emily closed her eyes. "Please, please understand we didn't mean to attack." Her whole career, her whole species, really, hung on that whisper. They didn't have to wait long. 34 minutes later, an alert chimed. Emily jumped to her feet. "Lucas, look!" AO1 had broken formation within the coma. It drifted forward, not accelerating violently like before, but sliding out of its hiding place like a cautious animal stepping into the open. Then it pulsed, once. A perfect 6-pulse sequence. Lucas nearly collapsed. "It's answering us. It's answering us." Emily stared, tears stinging her eyes. "We're talking to it." AO1 pulsed again. 6, pause, 6. Repeating their pattern back at them. Not random, not hostile. Acknowledge. 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 Her heart hammered. "We need to tell Reeves. And warn them any attack on QX1 will break this." But before they could reach the door, the alarm bell blared. A red flash bathed the hall outside. Pentagon directive. QX1 intercept initiated. Emily froze. "No, no, no, not now." Lucas sprinted to the nearest terminal, fingers flying across the keys. The Air Force just launched a kinetic interceptor from the Marshall facility. It's on a direct course for QX1. Emily felt the world tilt. If we hit QX1, Atlas will think AO1 failed or betrayed it, or that we escalated. Lucas swallowed hard. And then it may escalate too. Emily grabbed her coat. "We're going to the command room." The JPL command room was chaos when they burst inside. Reeves stood at the center, surrounded by military officers barking into headsets. Locke hovered over a cluster of screens, jaw set. Stanton paced like a wolf, waiting for permission to strike again. Emily shoved her way through. "Stop the intercept!" Stanton spun on her, furious. "Dr. Carter, this facility is under military control. You don't get to give orders." Emily faced Locke instead. "We made contact. AO1 responded, peacefully, intelligently. If you destroy QX1 now, we might lose the only chance we have to prevent retaliation." Locke hesitated. A single flicker of doubt broke across her face. What kind of contact? Patterned pulse communication. Reciprocal, deliberate, intelligent. It mirrors our message. Reeves stepped toward her. "You're certain?" "Yes." Emily's voice trembled with urgency. "And AO1 is listening right now. It's testing our behaviors. It will interpret the destruction of QX1 as—" Stanton cut her off. "As us defending ourselves." Emily's temper snapped. "You can't talk deterrence to something with no reason to fear us." Stanton shot back. "And you can't reason with something that hides inside a comet." "Enough!" Locke shouted. The room fell silent except for the hum of monitors. She fixed her gaze on Emily.
"You're telling me Atlas is communicating. You're telling me AO1 acknowledged us. If that's true, why would Atlas weaponize 2 asteroids in the first place?" Emily's reply was almost a whisper. It didn't weaponize them. It repositioned them. Why? Emily's voice cracked. "To show us what matters to it." "And what is that?" Locke demanded. Emily looked at the projections, Atlas's pulses, AO1's behavior, the shifting paths of QX1 and LS7, and said, "Mass, geometry, relationship, motion. It's demonstrating principles, teaching us, showing how trajectories create outcomes." Lucas added, "This isn't war. This is a classroom." Reeves whispered, "A test of intelligence." Emily nodded. "Not just ours individually, ours as a species." Locke stared at her for a long moment. Then an officer shouted from across the room, "Interceptor approaching target. T-9 minutes." Emily's voice rose, desperate now. "Locke, listen to me. If we hit QX1, Atlas will respond in kind. We don't know how strong it is, how fast it can pulse, how far it can reach. We've already struck AO1. This is our last chance to de-escalate." Locke looked torn, truly torn. Then Stanton stepped forward. "Ma'am, Atlas's power is purely speculative. QX1 is tangible, large, a real threat. We neutralize what we can control. We cannot allow a massive object to merge with an alien construct." "Why not?" Emily demanded. "Because we don't know what it will build." Emily whispered, "And you assume the worst." Stanton didn't deny it. Locke closed her eyes for one long second, then said, "Abort the intercept." The room erupted. Stanton shouted, "Madam Director!" "Abort the intercept," Locke repeated louder. "Now!" An officer scrambled at his console. "Sending abort command. Transmitting." No response from the interceptor. Emily felt dread crawl up her spine. "Try again," she said. "Sending again. No response." Reeves whispered, horrified, "Is it malfunctioning?" A communications officer turned, face white. "It's not malfunctioning. It's ignoring us." The room froze. Emily's stomach dropped. Stanton locked eyes with her. The Pentagon set autonomous protocols. Failsafes override abort commands. Emily felt her knees weaken. "You mean you launched a weapon we can't turn off?" Stanton didn't answer, because the answer was yes. Atlas pulsed again, harder, brighter, a surge that shook instruments on Earth. AO1 emerged fully from the coma, glowing softly, aimed directly at the incoming interceptor. And then it accelerated. Emily clutched Lucas's arm. "Oh, God, it's intercepting the interceptor." "Collision course," Reeves whispered. The command room went silent. On the screens, interceptor vector, AO1 vector, convergence point, 17 seconds to impact. Emily whispered, "It's sacrificing itself." Stanton growled, "It's trying to protect QX1. Emily shook her head. "No, it's trying to protect the communication, trying to stop us from destroying the test." Lucas murmured, "It's de-escalating." And at T-5 seconds, AO1 did something no one expected. It transmitted a pulse, a perfect mirror of the last pattern Emily sent. 6, pause, 6. A peaceful message, a plea, a final one. And then, contact, a flash, a burst of silence. AO1 vanished. The interceptor spun wildly off course, destabilized but intact. And QX1? QX1 kept moving toward Atlas. The room erupted in shouts. Emily staggered backward, numb. AO1 was gone. Gone because of them. She closed her eyes. We killed the messenger. The world changed 9 minutes later. Atlas pulsed. Not light, not a wave, Not a scan, a shape, a geometric projection, visible across multiple spectra, spanning hundreds of kilometers across the coma. A tetrahedral symbol, but altered. One side missing, incomplete. A wound. The room fell silent. Locke whispered, "It's showing us loss." Emily shook. "No, not loss. Not yet." The symbol pulsed again. This time another form appeared beside it. QX1. A line connected them, a line representing the trajectory they had interfered with, the test path they disrupted by launching a weapon. The projection pulsed again, and the incomplete tetrahedron rewired itself, shifted, changed shape into something horrifyingly familiar. Earth's orbital geometry. The room gasped. Emily whispered, "It's telling us the consequences." Reeves whispered, "It's telling us it knows where we live." Then Atlas pulsed a final time, and the projection collapsed into a single, chilling symbol. A countdown arc, a curve, a window, a message as simple as it was devastating. Your move. Locke's voice trembled. "What does that mean?" Emily inhaled slowly. The 5-second moment of change arrived in her chest. A clarity sharper than fear, colder than terror, but anchored in truth. "It means," she said softly, "that Atlas isn't retaliating yet." Lucas whispered, "Yet?" Emily nodded. "It's giving us one last chance to show who we are." "And what are we supposed to do?" Locke asked. Emily looked at the asteroid trajectory, at the crippled interceptor, at the empty space where AO1 had been, and she said, "We help QX1 reach Atlas." The room exploded. Stanton shouted, "Insane! Treason! Are you out of your mind?" Emily raised her voice. "Listen to me!" The room froze. Her heartbeat thundered, but her voice was steady. "Atlas is building something, and the asteroid isn't a weapon. It's a component. It needs QX1 for whatever structure it's assembling, and that assembly, that geometry, may be the only thing standing between Earth and destruction." Locke stared at her. "Explain." Emily pointed at the projection. The missing side, the broken tetrahedron, the countdown arc. I swallowed. "It's not a threat. It's a diagram of what Atlas lacks, what it needs, what it came for." Reeves whispered, "It's not here to attack Earth." Emily finished, "It's here because it needs to complete something, something huge, something we interrupted, and it's telling us the only way to de-escalate is to let it finish." Locke exhaled shakily. "So what is it building?" Emily looked at the final symbol, at the arc, at the incomplete shape, and she said the only answer that made sense. "A shield." She paused. "A star-scale shield against something coming from the direction Atlas arrived." A murmur swept the room. Stanton shook his head. "This is fantasy." Emily shook hers. "No, this is orbital language. This is engineering. And this is warning." She looked at the symbol again. A countdown. Not to retaliation, to arrival. Atlas isn't our enemy. It's our first ally. Silence fell over the command room. Then Locke spoke. "What do we do?" Emily answered without hesitation. "We show Atlas what we are." "And what is that?" Locke whispered. Emily breathed in. "Not destroyers, not cowards, not children with explosives." She stood tall. "We are helpers, builders, partners in survival. She stared at QX1's path. We guide the asteroid to Atlas. Locke swallowed. And if Stanton is right, if this is all a trick... Emily met her eyes with the certainty of a person who had lived the 5-second moment that defines a lifetime. Then we die. But if I'm right, we live. The room held its breath. Finally, Locke said,
Prepare the redirect mission. Reeves nodded. Lucas exhaled. Stanton seethed. And Emily felt something impossible. Hope. 3 months later, humanity guided QX1 safely into Atlas's gravitational well. The interstellar object pulsed one final time, softly, warmly, and for the first time since entering our solar system, its shadow structure shifted into a complete geometric form. Something activated, something vast, something ancient, and then a new wave rippled outward, not at Earth, but beyond the edge of the solar system. A signal, a beacon, a warning to something far away. Emily watched the pulse expand through space. Lucas stood beside her. "Do you think we passed the test?" he whispered. Emily took a long, quiet breath. "I think," she said softly, "the test is just beginning." And above them, in the black sky beyond the reach of the sun, 3I ATLS pulsed, once, twice, 3 times. Not a threat, a heartbeat, a promise that the story was far from over.